Hey everyone, I'm going to make this the next podcast episode, all covered in salt. Had a really busy week in the office. Crazy weekend, 2 festivals on Saturday, which was yesterday. So didn't have a moment to go into our recording area in the office and record an episode, but I'm actually leaving a race and I wanted to do a quick recap and talk a little bit about the race I just did. So I just completed the Maple Valley IRONMAN 70.3. For those wondering why do I have salt all over my face and all over my shoulders, that is literally dry sweat. It's disgusting. Well, I earned myself a nice cold bath and I'm going to take a shower and I'm going to probably lay down and take a nap. Had to wake up at 4. I had to get to the event at 4:45, hop on the shuttle, and then get to the area to do the 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike, and a 13 mile, pretty much a half marathon after that. This race was a little bittersweet for me. I got injured at Boston Marathon. I had a knee issue, then I had a Achilles issue, so I haven't done much training. And it was a rough idea, it was a bad idea by my coach. He was encouraging me to not go. He thought I might just blow up, injury might get worse. But the last couple of weeks I felt good enough not to cancel the race last minute. And thankfully I finished the race 5 hours and 27 minutes, definitely far from a PR. But again, I haven't been training much. No pain in the Achilles, no pain in the knee. Majority of the issue I had, the swim was solid, bike was solid, slower than usual, of course. I kind of blew up on the run. Mile 6, I had to start walking. Fatigue was settling in. And I've noticed whenever I'm sweating too much and too much electrolytes are coming out of my system, it's my body's way of telling me I'm exhausted. Lack of hours of training, and of course, to me, to my body, it was a lot to endure. So I did lots of walking, but you know what? I came across the finish line. My boys were there. My wife was there. Actually, I'm on my way to meet them at a restaurant. Where am I going with this share? And why do I even do these? Right? So between racing and between putting myself in positions, difficult positions, I can't tell you how many times in my head as I'm doing the race, I'm thinking to myself, why? Why do I do this? And there was one thought that came through my mind. And the thought is, if there's anything worth doing, do it well. And I've had many peers in the business come up to me. They say, we've been reading these books. One of them, actually, my friend Katie just came to me recently. She said, I read Man Up by Pedro Scalion. And in the book, it talks about run a marathon, change your life. So she was asking me, what does the marathon do as far as changing your life? I'm like, well, that's a lesson you need to discover on your own. But let me tell you a little bit about what it teaches me, because the regretful feeling today of how much this hurt, where I'm pedaling, fatigue is sitting in, my VO2 max is low, I'm suffering, the pain is way more than it should be. During the run, I'm second guessing myself, like, should I ever want to do this again or not? That regretful feeling is knowing I didn't give it my all. Unfortunately, I was injured, but I still went in and did not have a good performance. I was slow on the swim, so slow on the bike, and then the run felt like hell. Am I going to do it again? I don't know. This is my 6th one. Maybe. I don't know. I never say never. I'm very emotional. I get very philosophical after a race. I'm like deprived of every kind of chemical you can imagine in my body. My body was injecting me with anything possible to probably keep me to survive. It's probably thinking I'm dying with all the endorphins and dopamine and cortisol, you name it. But again, I'm going to go back to the question I'm asking, why do we keep doing this? And I remember multiple times after COVID, indoor training got very popular. There's a program called Swift where you can rack your bike on a trainer. It connects to this platform. You got a computer in front of you. You do group rides, right? There's structured workouts. We would meet and, 15, 20 of us sometimes, and we'd have conversations. And I'm on this Zwift call with some legitimate world championship qualifier Ironman level coaches, newbies, and people in between like me. And we've had conversations about, like, why do we keep doing this? It's suffering, it's painful, you get sweaty, it hurts. But we just keep going to wanting to do this more. And there's one thing I talked about, and we had a really good discussion for like an hour. I think there's 3 points. The one I wanted to dissect with me sharing this, as I'm being philosophical after this race, is the idea of being human. I think, and I believe, the more we suffer, the more human we feel. Like right now, I'm pumped. Like I feel great. There's not a single problem in my life. The same problem I had 2 days ago in the office or at home with my family, with my cousins, everything that was like just piling up while I'm being a victim mentality. Right now, not a single problem in my life. Why? I'm just glad that was over. And that's a piece I think we need to think about more, because when we don't do human-like activities, we get what? Stress, we get depressed, we get anxiety, a lot of issues mentally. And you notice people that do some kind of difficult hobby, it doesn't have to be triathlon or marathon. I think just people who are physically active, they tend to have better skills and skill set to handle a problem. So as you do, you feel more human, right? So, and the significance to that is if you think about what are we exposed to in the last 100 years? So, corporate America or office work, all that stuff, like sitting down, having a desk, like that is completely new. That's like within the last, 60, 70 years, the last century. But think about the ways we fed ourselves before. We had to go hunt for food, we had to gather wood, we had to be in the forest, we had to be on the fields. Movement, as in we were all farmers. And we have thousands of years of DNA that we have to move, we have to sweat, we have to have vascular health, and we have to also have enough muscle to be able to lift things. And you take that away from a human, we suffocate, right? We now have issues with our health. Obesity is all-time high, anxiety is all-time high, suicide levels are over the roof. And then you plug a person back into suffering, all of a sudden all those problems solve themselves. Right? So it is very human-like to do these kind of things. So again, Ironman or marathon or whatever is not the answer. The answer is, what do you do to do things that you suffer with, that you control? Because the uncontrollable stuff that life tends to give you becomes simpler to handle. Right now, I'm handling all the uncontrollable issues I have, and I have a ton of problems in the office, and there's challenges with some commitments, and there's money goals, financial planning. Again, when you victimize yourself, and that's the most difficult thing you're doing, it becomes very hard to handle. But when you're doing this, right? When you're doing races and when you're doing a 5K maybe when you're working out or whatever, you tend to handle the issues that you don't control better because you control this one fully. So one, it makes you feel human. I think second point is longevity. Again, I think this is to an extreme. Don't do what I'm doing. There's a reason why I'm injured this year. I was pushing too hard. And I think if I were to slow down, long-term perspective, done more yoga, done more stretching, I was all about build, get my bike power up, get my threshold higher on the bike, and swim better, and then every workout had to hurt. That's not the right way. I'm sometimes too competitive, and I'm learning to deal with that more. I'm getting better. I'm dealing with that, but I'm also paying for the consequences. And this year I skipped a bunch of races. I didn't go to nationals, barely finished Boston Marathon. This was a test. I'm so glad this went well as far as no injuries. But longevity is a big piece because, again, when you don't do it on the extreme, you don't need to be a bodybuilder to be strong. And there's a statistic I read that, I can't remember, it was like 80 or 90%. It was a high number of 65 plus year olds that end up in the hospital. Big percentage of the 80, 90%, or due to slip, trip, and fall. And a very high number of deaths happen due to slip, trip, and fall in the elderly. Why? Because they don't possess enough muscular strength to hold themselves from falling, putting an arm out, grabbing something, or actually not falling because you need muscle to keep yourself balanced. Just enough, right? It prevents death. So a little bit of muscle is a good thing, right? And what is the number one thing that fights insulin? Muscle mass. That is an amazing organ to fight insulin. People have sugar, diabetes, all kinds of problems. You build muscle, it tends to fight off all those issues, not medicine, not some kind of a diet change. Yes, diet, of course, naturally helps, but you build muscle and you tend to just get healthier that way. And vascular health, everything else is second. The number one most important thing that keeps people living longer is vascular health. It's the ability for your heart to pump blood and oxygen to parts of your body that matter, like your brain, your lungs, your kidneys, your liver, like your muscles. So again, this is on the extreme. Don't do what I just did. If you want to challenge yourself, absolutely, you'll be tougher. But pick one. You want to be tougher to handle problems, or you want to be weaker when you handle problems? You handle problems better when you're tougher. So yeah, do some tough things, challenge yourself. But you just need enough vascular health for your heart to actually circulate through these old pipes that we don't use much. Because we did this for thousands of years. We cut it off in the last century, and we're getting sick. And there's very few people I know who do this. Like today, I just talked to Matt, 52-year-old dentist, got his personal best today. Super healthy guy. Again, everybody I'm talking to today, like there's all these fit people. Yeah, there's some people in there that were like doing this just to challenge themselves to get back in shape. But reality is, you do what healthy people do, you become healthier. You do what unhealthy people do, you become less healthy. And less healthy people tend to do less. Simple rule, right? So longevity will help you live longer. And a third piece, I kind of talked about it earlier, but if you had a choice, right, to deal with the uncontrollable problem of life, which could be anything. And unfortunately, recently, about a week ago, one of my peers' son committed suicide from bleak depression. I don't have the exact information, and privacy reasons won't get too much into it. And about 8 years ago, another friend of mine's, their child also did the same, committed suicide in their 20s. And I'm not saying run a marathon, you'll handle that better. I can't even imagine what it's like to lose a child. I mean, I have such a deep, meaningful relationship with my two boys. I can't even think about that. Like, I literally cut business trips short just so I can make it home the night before my kids go to sleep so I can pray with them and we can debrief on our day. That's our tradition. So that is a difficult thing that you don't control, and it's one of the worst things that can happen, if not the worst thing that can happen when you have a child who hurts themselves. Because now you're thinking, living with blame and issues as far as, what could have I done better, right? So it wasn't a car accident, so they literally committed suicide. Well, there's other issues too. There's financial issues, there is divorces, there is a business idea that didn't go through, there's an investment that didn't blossom, A, B, C, D, you name it. Problems happen all the time. Do you want to handle problems as a strong person or as a weak person, right? If somebody throws 100 pounds at you, would you like to be strong or weak? Pick one. And again, doing difficult things just makes you not just physically stronger, but mentally. You know, like I said, I don't think about my problems right now. Magically, they solve themselves. What did I do? Did I solve the problems? No. Because the majority of our problems in our head, the 98% of things that we fear that are going to happen tomorrow, do not. And when you're mentally stronger, magically you're more present. I'll leave you guys with one of my favorite quotes. To live in fear is to live in the future. I'm afraid of what's going to happen. In reality, 98% of what we make up in our heads don't happen. And the stronger mindset you have, the less you create problems. The 98% goes down. So to live in fear is to live in the future. To live in regret is to live in the past. Have you guys ever lost sleep? I do too. I'm not saying I'm an exception to this rule. Have I lost sleep in the middle of the night by just reliving a mistake I made, a conversation that could have been better, a forgiveness lesson, something I could have done that would have given more of a desirable result? Absolutely. But what does it do to the moment? It takes away happiness from the moment, right? And there's been a study done that about 47% of the time, our mind wanders to either the past, the could have, should have, would have, or the future, which is the fear. And about half the time we're unhappy. So when the mind wanders is a direct cause of unhappiness. But I can tell you this, the more I train, the more I challenge myself physically, which makes me mentally stronger, the less problems I have, the more I'm in the moment. This 5.5-hour race, I wasn't thinking about my previous problems, not about fears of the future. I just needed to complete this race and survive. Yes, it was difficult. Yes, it was long. There was a lot of training, give or take. But how much more rewarding is life when you are stronger to handle the issues which are commonly self-imposed and made up in our head? Because we really, majority of people, unlike certain issues with children, and like I mentioned, the suicide example I used, you don't control that, but I do believe that God has an answer to that too. I don't know what it is, but I hope people can actually handle those things better. And I truly do believe when you're physically strong, you're mentally stronger. And when you are physically stronger, you're able to handle issues better. And a lot of issues that you don't control tend to magically not solve themselves, but you don't make it into a bigger problem. So that's my philosophy after doing this race. Gonna go do some ice bathing and then take a shower, lay down, and probably pass out on the floor with my boys. Because I think I earned it. Maybe I'll have a pizza. Cheers, you guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and I look forward to sharing more episodes with you, more thoughts, and more lessons from my book, The Power of Mindset. Cheers.